Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for a afternoon edition of Rideshare Rodeo Live. I have the honor of having Mike Hruby back again for a second visit, a follow-up, and I think the timing on this is just about perfect. And Mike, I want to thank you for coming on again.
Thank you, Steve. It's a real pleasure to be here. These are very exciting times for people who work the gig economy and freelance and self-employed. So this is timely, and thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you and I had decided we were going to do it anyway, but the timing now is just crazy. I mean, we're coming up on November. Things are getting weird, even in your state, as related to
Yes.
the gig economy. Before we even jump in, I forgot to even ask you backstage while we were getting ready if like what do you know about this? It seemed like it was going to be a duplicate of California. They were going to make an AB5, and already the companies were starting their own Prop 22 for Massachusetts, but now that's been torn down?
Yes. The state court, I think the Supreme Court, they just tossed out the their Prop 22 equivalent here in Massachusetts, and it's not on the ballot. So Uber and its allies and a number of activists locally on both sides of the issue had planned a large, energetic, we'll call it, uh, ballot support campaign to get people ginned up and excited and come vote, as if people aren't going to be excited and vote this fall anyway. But this was expected to be a $200 million throwing money at the problem, you know, vote search. So it was something. It's all gone now. So
Sorry,
there,
everybody, that the problem has been corrected. That was an issue on my end, but it's corrected.
the
Sorry, I couldn't hear anything for a minute,
okay,
but I'm back now. Everything's
all right.
great.
Anyway,
Sorry.
so it at the moment we're back to the status quo in Massachusetts, and that is what I would characterize as an uneasy and very quiet standoff between the forces of unionization and a very strong sector of the working population here that works in the gig economy and works self-employed. We have I, the thing that will affect freelancing in Massachusetts most importantly, the biggest impact is going to be who wins the gubernatorial race. We haven't had primaries yet, so we don't know who's on the ballot. We can surmise, and one of the leading candidates on the Democratic side is the current Attorney General, who was the understudy to the Attorney General who preceded her, who wrote what's called the 2008 interpretation of our ABC test law. And
Yes.
she looked at the bill and she said, "This can't work," which, of course, is true. California proved it.
Yeah.
And she wrote what amounts to a reinsertion of prong C into how her office will interpret this. And I can put it in ordinary English and say, if you pay all your taxes and follow the law generally, we're not going to investigate you if you're an employer, which is like prong C in when it was connected to prong A and B with an or. Now this is very much inside baseball,
Right
but
now, you have to get all three. You have to be ABC.
yes, but that's not the way
Okay.
the ABC test used to be.
Right. Right. Right.
There's an or between prongs A and B, and an or C, which is, do you have an independent business of your own?
Right.
And that has normally been, I mean, since people started working, that's been how you got out from underneath coverage of by the ABC test here in Massachusetts.
So
Now,
we have a listener from Illinois who's saying still has common law IRS tax. That's not Barella, right? That's just the IRS tax
yeah,
status.
the IRS has a couple of standards, and when you look at them, as they were. I don't know if they've changed. When you look at them as if you were an employer or an employee, they're pretty realistic. And there were 20 of them, then they shortened that, and I think there are 10 or 11 of them now. But they look at what I would consider to be valid metrics of the relationship. Do you bring your own tools?
Right,
You
right, right.
that
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Are you
So,
out of the right? Are you out of the and yeah, and like the first and like A, are you out of the command of the hiring entity? Always you are, or I mean, almost in every case I know of you are. I mean, it's can you
yes,
do this job? How much will you charge? Okay, go do it.
right,
You're
exactly.
not
So,
usually but
yeah,
here's a comment too from the same person. Here in Illinois, we have a union favored amendment, one which I'm working to help defeat on November 8th. It would make right to work illegal. You and I talked about this the last time with the PRO Act and right to work states going illegal. I didn't know like already on a chopping block was Illinois' right to work.
uh, I'm I'm kind of vaguely aware that there's a lot going on in Illinois of this nature. That's very heavily. It's up there with New York, Massachusetts, and California in terms of union dominance of the lawmaking machinery. This is not a surprise uh, that they want to make right to work illegal.
Right.
And yes, it's meant to draw votes from unions, but most of the union members are secretly would love to be their own boss. So we'll see when the votes are counted what happens with that.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. And then I thought up here they said it was a right to work state right here, but then down here it was
I'm
Illinois is
not
not
sure,
a right to work state.
you know
And I
that.
didn't I was wondering, I didn't think it was.
Yeah, it
Um
doesn't sound like Illinois these days.
it's been 75 years since Hartley veto override, but the amendment is unnecessary.
It would be redundant, but they want to make sure that the door never opens. And
Yeah.
by putting it in the Constitution this way, uh, that's the go-to solution these days.
So one last thing before we jump into the truckers, Mike, that I got to ask you because I asked you last time, like, um, what is up with all of the California attorneys working on the fight against Prop 22 and the confirmation of AB5 and all of these Lyft, Uber, Instacart, DoorDash who have tons of attorneys, all of these attorneys not noticing that Prop 22 was a constitutional violation and whether no matter what happens from it, I see most likely it's gonna go down because the companies are having too much trouble making money in California too. It's weird to me now that I'm watching Prop 22, I'm watching it hurt these companies just as much as anything else, and I'm like, "Why are you staying there? You're having to subsidize all these workers." Like, if you work for DoorDash, let's say, they don't change the amount out there, which they should, because you're paid 120% of minimum wage by the company per active hour. So if you can do 2 dashes in an hour in San Francisco,
Yep.
okay, that's all you can do. Maybe stacked ones, but let's just say they're just normal single orders. You can do 2 in an hour. If you're getting a $3 base pay plus the tip, and they're not allowed to use the tip, and the minimum wage in San Francisco is 19.23 or 19.34 or whatever it is, almost $20, then 120% is going to be $24 an hour. Now, if they're saying your base pay is $3 on 2 orders, that's 6. So they're subsidizing $18 an hour for every active platform worker.
If that's the way the math works out and the way it sounded like from what you said, then that would be true. I you mentioned I think um, what's in court is the validity of AB5. Uh, that we may be talking about different cases because there are a couple, but um, Prop
Yeah, I know that and we should mention to everybody that even though Mike knows all about this stuff, he's not we're going to get into some other topics here in just a second, but he's not gig focused. He's aware, but he's not gig focused. He's more focused on freelancers, writers, interpreters, all the people that really got it hard, and what's going to happen to the rest of this country. There's a bunch of gig workers, but there's a bunch of freelancers and self-employed. And I mean, as Mike put it, 60 million people, 59 million people. That's a third of the workforce in this country is self-employed or
Correct.
independent. So, I
Or
mean, like, you
part-time or full.
just
Yes.
you just can't take that away. I don't get how California is an example. See, the way I saw Massachusetts even was that, okay, I felt like the companies were trying to get in front of the AB5 type legislation instead of waiting for it to come down, then having their Prop 22 fight. They were trying to go first almost. And I know they already spent 17.6 million. Lyft released that number in Massachusetts campaigning, and
Yep.
it was let to go for a while. Up there in the Northeast, as much as I know and remember, people are very caring about their voting rights, not just who they vote for, but the right to vote. You guys are a part of the country that really your vote matters. You care. Everybody up there. Aren't people like even who want to vote for the not Prop 22 version way in Massachusetts pissed that, oh, we put this on, you know what? We're just going to take that off. You guys don't need to vote on that. We'll just handle that.
I believe that attitude in the courts who took this off the ballot, I think people resent that very much. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
the people don't really like legislating through ballot questions. They will do it, and sometimes they'll do it and swamp the ballot box. But in general, they want their legislators to represent them and to not have it done one slice of the pie at a time with 4 million votes at stake.
Yeah.
The whole game decided in one throw of the dice.
Right.
This is the political tenor of New England is town meeting, where you go down and in March or April and you say your piece. I don't think we should rezone that farmland. I think we should whatever.
Yeah.
And that is a very strong culture in New England, and it runs very deep.
That's
So
kind of what I was referring to. Like even
yeah,
local everybody's into all the elections up there. As far as I can remember, and people I know, not that they shouldn't be everywhere, but that's a very heavy
right.
spot in the U.S. for people caring about all of the votes, the whole ticket.
My understanding is that what's happened in Massachusetts is our law has been protected by an interpretation. California's was not. They put it in. They put in some couple dozen exemptions into the original AB5. That was for well-connected, well-lobbied interests like doctors, lawyers, accountants, that sort of thing, and professionals who, you wouldn't want to employ your doctor. You just need him when you're sick.
Right.
That upset so many apple carts about, that they had to go back and do AB 2257 and add up to 100 to total about 100 exemptions. It still didn't address the issue that there are 6 to 9 million self-employed people in California, and the two bills together didn't really touch the new number of people that had the problem. It
No.
was just so they ran Prop 22 over that mess. They sort of paved over the problem just for gig workers and drivers and food delivery. And the public was very strongly in support. 59-41 is a landslide in politics. Everyone will admit that on either side.
To which way? 51
Uh, 59 to
or
40
59?
favor of freedom to be, a
Independent.
rideshare driver.
Okay. Okay.
Then the court said, "Oh, the I think it's a California court threw that out."
Yeah, it was the 14th district,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
the California voters voted for it. Presumably, they know where their interests are.
And
Better,
it won by 3 million votes.
right. I mean, it's nobody was doubting it.
Again, there was no margin of error. It won 64% to like 32.
Yeah. So now a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court federally has taken up the judicial, the California decision to override Prop 22. I don't know the decision. My area is economics and politics, but not necessarily the nuance of the law. So I apologize to your listeners if it's confusing, but um,
Mhm.
it seems to be going. The fact that it's come up again in a federal court is probably a benefit to people who want to continue either being a customer of those services or being a provider of the services themselves, driving and food delivery. So,
I fully agree. And I want to make a quick comment too before because I see the number growing of the people in the chat. If you're making please don't if you're making political comments, please don't make them in any kind of slamming or and even be careful with that. This is not a political channel. We just happen to have to talk about a lot of things. It's impossible to talk about things without being somewhat political these days. So, but please don't go around, like slashing on anybody else because there's people of all walks of politics that come through this show. So, um, let's just
I'll
let's
bet.
just. I know it can be hard. I know it gets heated. I know we're coming. Things are going backwards in this country. I know it's hard, but I just had to say that. But and Jay Lopez, you're on fire today because she actually is talking about where we're going next. There were two SCOTUS rejections of the AB5 challenge cases, the writers and the California truckers. I thought there were more than that. The latter was dismissed by SCOTUS in June. And so actually what Mike was talking about though, there were more than that. And it was just so messed up that they had to turn it into AB 2257. They had to make a whole nother bill because there was umpteen pages of carve outs.
Right.
I mean, it almost looked like it, in high school or something, it'd be a paper your teacher would give back to you, not even grade, and be like, dude, this is the best you can do.
Dude,
Like that's how I think of AB5.
yes.
And AB 2257 is like a C minus after
When you
you returned it in.
when you read those laws, you just think, what were they thinking? I mean,
Yeah.
no matter what your values are, it's very hard to decipher what the provisions are because they're so convoluted. And then anyway. Um, I wanted to, Jay Lopez comment, the, I believe personally that those two challenges, truckers and the ASJA, the Society of Journalists and Authors, were,
Mhm.
uh, the court declined to issue a ruling or a writ of certiorari because they believed by the um, West Virginia versus EPA, they had sent this kind of regulation back to the states. And this, although everyone like, throws up their hands and think, why do they do that? The all the state legislatures are easier to reach and easier to affect for an individual than the federal government is, and
Mhm.
that that basically West Virginia versus the EPA has drawn the curtain on the New Deal and its administrative overreach. And this is entirely helpful to anyone who wants to work for a living under any circumstance, and especially those who are in the category of self-employed, which I would put gig drivers in. And the court is not going to back that kind of overreach. It will demand the conditions that will now apply will demand a great deal of political activity from the citizens. But given that Californians only have to go to Sacramento and not to DC to get their grievances heard, is a big benefit. In Massachusetts, the furthest away you can go is 2.5 hours, and then you get to Boston. And you know, the state governments are going to hear from the public much more about bills like this. And so I think those two, they just said we're going to handle them. You know, you guys get to handle it. The federal government's getting out of this.
Sure.
And
Like, and he clarified his name is John Lopez. So he
okay,
just clarified to let us know he was a guy and that
Jay
his name is
Lopez is
John.
different
Yeah.
personality entirely.
So because of AB5 in 2019 turned into PRO Act in late 2019, that's a little confusing to me because 2019 is when they passed the PRO Act. January 1st of 2020 is when AB5 or AB5, and when AB5 went into effect was January 1st of 2020. I think the PRO Act's been around longer than that.
Yes, it had a
I don't.
very early version. This has come up before. This is the late Rich Trumka's item to pack everything you want into one bill and then back it as hard as you can. And they saw favorable conditions and they brought it up again. And they made sure that it had the ABC test in it, which is, of course, a test designed to fail everybody that subscribes to it. And
Right.
the House in, I believe it was 2020, passed it, and then it didn't get through the Senate after a couple of tries.
Right. And then I'm going to let you lead into the truck piece after just I address a little bit of this. So, one of the exemptions not added in 2257 did not exempt independent truckers. So, right, if you go back to Dynamex and then what happened at the pandemic, the truckers were written an exemption actually that nobody really ever thought was going to appear in, as far as I know it, that nobody really ever thought was going to appear in Supreme Court. Like, no, like who's going to do this now? We need the truckers. And of all times, they decided, yeah, let's do this. They're not wearing masks. They're not as essential to us anymore, even though they're probably more so essential. And as far as I know, they had a carve out that just got ripped away from them by the Supreme Court. That's why there's 70,000 unemployed independent uh, owner operator truck in California.
Yes, and they're protesting. That is one of these. That's one of the forces that is taking the ABC test and AB5. AB5 being sort of the umbrella branding of all this, taking it national is that the California is so important to the rest of the country because the vast percentage of imports from Asia come through California ports. And those guys and gals in their semis and their, their drayage vehicles that move the containers around are an absolute front end of the interstate international trade, both. And California law is getting in the way of that trade. So it is in violation of the Gavin Newsom and his legislature can't uh, restrict international trade. Just can't. And they say, well, these truckers are in California. No, they're part of an absolutely vital supply line that puts goods into containers overseas, ships them here into the port, takes them off of the ships and puts them mostly on trains and the rest on trucks and takes them all over the country. You can stand there and watch it happen. And California has no right to do that. So that's the kind of situation where I would expect the federal courts to promptly push back on that kind of, push back on AB5 and 2257. There's no justification. You can call it, well, the sun hasn't set yet, so it's not enough. But specious objections, that is international trade. That's how it happens. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't sail into the port of Baltimore, and have local farmers from all over Maryland, go down and pick up their imported goods. That doesn't work that way. There are a lot of intermediaries. That's the main advantage of the free market is there's an intermediary to do all these different functions that have important value, which is why we have Uber and Lyft as platform companies, and And so this is a this is a major national issue. If those guys shut down a port, which secretly a lot of people hope they do, I mean, none of it. There's going to be a lot of stuff that does not get here for Christmas,
Yeah.
and not that the holidays are the most important thing on the planet, but tools and parts and materials are going back and forth, and this is fully international trade.
Yeah.
So I expect more fireworks, and I'm grateful to the truckers for bringing this to people's attention.
I don't know if it was you or if it was we have a trucker, Sean, who jumps on the live stream on Sunday sometimes, and he does it from his truck. He's always driving, and he just likes to jump on our stream. And I
Well, that's
told him about this. I was kind of hoping he was going to show up today, because he works for a company that got contracted to go to the port there and get something.
yep,
But he was like comparing his company to like Land O'Lakes. I don't know if you're familiar with Land O'Lakes in terms of, I know you know the company, but like that they're a co-op owned.
yep,
So like I guess his trucking company is that way. And I was like, I didn't think you could be a co-op in California. He's like, I'm not in California. I'm out of California in a co-op that's able to go to California and work.
right,
And so I was like, well, that's a weird way around. He's like, yeah, I mean, if all the truckers want to move out of California, and I mean, there's the big problem. People don't want to have to move their lives because California made the stupidest law ever. It's
right.
but he was telling me that when he did do the last run to the port of what is it? Newport Beach is a big one, I believe.
Long Beach is the
Long Beach.
very large port.
Yeah, and he told me that like he knows exactly how he chooses to get in there. He's got a way. He knows it. Been there many times, and he said that all the good ways and getting the exits on the freeway ramps were all blocked by parked trucks.
Hmm.
He said they're just shutting down everything and they're making mazes to get to this port.
Yes, and and there aren't that many. I mean, it's not like it's thousands of access routes. There, the
Yeah,
Long Beach has the interstates are draped right nearby, and that's a barrier in itself. Exits are not. So, in order to get onto it, you've got to go through the exit. It has a lot of curly cues. You know, I've been to it. I've been to that port. I've driven around. It's craziness, and almost anything can be a bottleneck.
yeah.
You throw a couple of old bikes or a wheelbarrow on the road, and you've got a blockade. So a 70-foot worth of semi is perfectly capable of stopping a couple of lanes. So,
So, can you see that you got this comment up on your screen? Is there anything you have to say about this comment?
the I personally thought that the FAA Authorization Act of 1994 might have been a stretch. I thought international trade would be stronger, uh, because it's a California bill. It's not fighting PRO Act. We're fighting AB5, and the state legislature. I read the FAA for um, quite a while ago, and it basically tells the states to butt out of federal network regulation. Uh, there's a great deal, Steve, in what is happening with California and similar laws that is just thumb your nose at the federal government, thumb your nose at other states' jurisdictions. We're just going to write this law and then use state taxpayer money to fight whoever fights us. And it's like just a rude gesture. It's like, come and get
Right.
me. You know,
So, um, as to the truckers, I've heard a couple different things. I've heard that they're now trying to like it. What it sounded like to me at first from one of the truckers that I was speaking with was that it sounded to me like what they were trying to do with the writers at the beginning of AB5. Like you can write 40 articles a year.
right?
Like not exactly that, but they were trying to make like these deals. Okay, you can still work, but you can only do this. And to me, I was just instantly seeing exactly what they were trying to do. Okay, there's 6 months left. You know that an average truck can't take more than 25 routes in that time. So you're saying that they can do up to 30 the rest of this year. and then you'll revisit it, kind of thing. It's not like it's an actual save, and it's even if that was it, it's not like anybody wants that.
They the battles here, if you get into the battle of wording and metrics, you have basically lost the argument and the public can't follow. You need to make it perfectly clear to the country, the biggest group of people, the people who are going to benefit by this, that what is at stake for them. Um, if we can't have independent drivers, I don't know what the East Coast is going to do for fresh fruits and vegetables. I don't know what they're going to do for imported goods. And if you get into the nuances of this legislation, you don't have a moral case anymore. Now you're trying to just exempt, truckers who work every Wednesday, but not the guys who just work Monday and Tuesday. And you get into little nits and gnats, and it you lose your support and you lose your focus. There is no reason that wages and working conditions in a competitive economy are the subject of national law, or even for that matter, state law, if fraud and violence or force are not present. People can,
Right.
we're
Yeah.
learning there are 11 million jobs unfilled. So, anyone who wants a job can certainly go find them. There are plenty to choose from, provided you're in the right place. So,
Yeah. So PRO Act was passed in the House in February 2020. I'm trying to remember. I thought the House was the one that it wasn't going to make it through Congress, but even that was going to be close. I thought the House did kick it through.
the House, yes, that is Nancy Pelosi's caucus,
Yeah.
and they've been legislating without benefit of other participants, and have been for some time. The they passed in the last 2 years. They passed almost anything they wanted, basically.
Right. You and I were talking about this the last time, how they like, okay, we can't get what we want, so we're going to dismantle AB or Prop 20 or PRO Act into pieces and just kind of shove the pieces through.
Right now, and they can't get it through the Senate anymore, so they're going to do that through regulation. But that's been stopped or slowed down because of West Virginia versus EPA,
Mhm.
which is a big, a really big contribution to freedom to freelance and freedom to be your own boss.
Oakland police are negotiating with truckers to let them pass through.
I,
So what does that say when the state is like, well, Oakland's going to let them, but where are you going to deliver?
what are the police going to do? The police aren't going to. I mean, the police can't protect the customers of the trucking companies. They don't have any right to do that, any authority whatsoever. You
Yeah.
know, so I
If
don't.
anything, this should just be brought down to fines. I mean, and it shouldn't even do that, but it should just come down to fines.
I mean, it's a protest. We suffer a lot.
Right. But these same police officers probably want to eat too.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and that's let them
you know
fight
you're
each
cutting off your own food supply, right? I don't know. Some of this stuff just drives me batty. Um, but yeah, there was John. Thank you for. By the way, please, John, subscribe to this channel because you've put up a lot of really good questions here today, and just things that I'm glad you brought up. So the 70,000 truckers, what do you think's going to happen with them now till the end of the year? Let's not even go too far. Are they going to be able to work?
Oh, boy,
If
that's
you had to guess, if you had to give your best,
yeah.
what's going to happen in 2 weeks?
I'm not sure how it's going to happen because I don't see all the full palette of the political forces at work. But when the public starts being inconvenienced, you can expect motion. Uh,
Right.
Again, not sure what it is. I mean, they arrest strikers in the past. Most of what I think the truckers are doing is slow rolling, which I do not believe is an offense.
Right.
They arrested them truckers in Indiana and Canada, different jurisdictions, but
But
uh,
that was a different,
yeah,
a little bit. I mean, I know Canada's was about masking and that kind of rights, but even ours was like a follow up to Canada's. This is a different fight.
right.
This is 70,000 workers with those sweet brand new $400,000 semi cabs. You
right.
can't work.
Yeah, right. I mean,
It's like,
and um, I truthfully don't know. I don't know that anyone knows. I think this is the ASJA suit, American Society of Journalists and Authors, appeared not out of nowhere because it had a huge amount of work, but you wouldn't expect that the authors and journalists would be a major pivot point, which it had the potential to be and still does because it's a First Amendment um, right. We have, for instance, we've looked at uh, the occupations that depend on language, uh, not necessarily English, Spanish, Portuguese, but language in general. Everything in the sciences and medicine depends on the language of that discipline. So if you're saying uh, you can't be a medical, contract worker, does that mean that you're depriving the public of the results of medicine and medical advances and treatments because they speak that language? Very funny issues come up, and they rise in importance because they seize both the judicial system's interest and attention and the public at the same time.
right. So this is a comment from the trucker that I've been telling you that came on the live stream that's become a friend of ours, friend of the channels.
Right.
Um, Forming worker co-ops is America's best option. Thoughts?
Yes, I believe they're onto something with the co-op. When I, in the depths of activist despondency, I tried to think of what's another approach to this in addition to be my own boss. Is there another way to go at it? And
Hmm.
the answer is to make the buyer of the services back into the seller by owning the company that you work for, even though you own it in collectively now, instead of individually. It's not Steve's, Highway Express. It would be, you know, whatever, you know,
Yeah.
all Colorado trucking.
Right.
So I think that the co-op is important as a tool, but I mean,
Does
if
it meet now that the truckers have been pulled away from the whatever exemption you want to call it that they've had since the pandemic? Do you think that the co-op model meets any standards that would let the 70,000 California truckers work
I
at
think
this time anyway?
I think it does because they would be working for an entity. The
Yeah.
entity is buying their services. They happen to be buying it retail from the people that own it, but there's no I do not know of a law against that. I mean, you and I could put up a broadcasting co-op and we employ Steve and Mike, and we say we're employees, but in fact, you sell yours, I sell mine. We both, pick that, you know, pick up the change that we sell. We have a big administrative load, whereas before it was your operation and my operation separately.
Yeah.
But if it's the only way to work, then people will pay the price. So I think it's worth exploring.
So we have Miss Linda here saying that
Uh,
Gavin Newsom's no, he's not trying to fix AB5. He's trying to help collect for AB5.
yes, I saw Dee Dee Meyer's tweet. I couldn't believe it. That woman shows up everywhere. There's trouble. It's just like, okay, great, thanks. Um, yes, that's publicity foremost, publicity over policy, and all from the usual sources. Thanks to Gavin. Thanks to Dee Dee. Love it.
So, again, John, I discussed with both my state representative and the Illinois Policy Institute about be my own boss. Are there some details I could share for possible action in Illinois and maybe other states? Is that something we'll get to at the end in the be my boss, or is that a question that you can independently answer?
We are there's a couple ways we can break it. We can break it into parts. First of all, we are in continuing negotiations with members of Congress and their offices about support for Be My Own Boss legislation that would allow individuals to remove themselves from the coverage of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is the
Mhm.
center, the main tentpole of national labor regulation. And out of respect for their interest in our approach, we are not publicizing language right now. So I haven't got that. Um, this is the 330 million people in this country, 180 million of them work, and you got to get a lot of opinion in. What I will tell you is that the three most important parts of what's in the legislation are the three things that every self-employed and independent worker in the country wants. And the first one is what I call a toggle, is they want to go someplace somehow, electronically or physically, and they want to say, I am self-employed. All the other battles, that I'm not involved in that. I am self-employed. And when that is done successfully, the second component is they need a token to take to their customers, their patients, their clients, the people who, their patrons, people they work for, whose work is commissioned by others, and say, I am voluntarily self-employed. I've registered this with the government, chosen that election, and no, I'm not a union salt trying to get back at you and going to accuse you of being a closet employer because I was a closet employee. I mean, that's a big deal. That's how our adversaries are eliminating the businesses. They're trying to terrify small business and big business too. That they've got that plan. Terrify people into not buying from freelancers. That's as good as a law.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then the third thing is that it has an attractive name that the public empathizes with. Be my own boss. I can't tell you how many times I've heard frustrated people say, I just want to be my own boss.
Right.
I want to come and go as I wish. I don't mind working my butt off. I'll work nights, weekends, whenever I can. But I can't handle someone, telling me to go every which way, when I know how to do it better than they do. And, there's a lot of research on the fact that the people doing the work actually know a lot.
Mhm.
So we use that title, and there are others, but that's the one you can gather a crowd with. And this is going to be important because this is going to be one of those first areas where a change in the law is coming because of West Virginia versus EPA. We have to find ways to usefully get people to be able to do the work they want to do simply.
In the most simplistic of terms, just so people understand the weight of the West Virginia EPA thing, can you explain like how we're going to feel a ripple effect from just that one thing so that people can understand how messed up things are?
Yes, the New Deal, starting with labor law. Anyway, starting with labor law, the
Mhm.
New Deal threatened to pack the Supreme Court if the court didn't do as the president and the progressives wished. And so they tested the court's will with the Fair Labor Standards Act. Fair is not defined, um, and the court backed it up. So it sets minimum wage and working conditions and hours per week. And they got it through during the Depression when people were, they were shrinking the money supply and there wasn't enough money to go around. So they at a crisis, they put this in. Everything that's followed has in terms of Supreme Court decisions, has basically bowed to the regulatory urge as the primary expert in what should happen, instead of requiring that the Congress legislate things if they want them to happen.
Right.
And so what you have for 90 years is administrative overreach. And, we're doing too many things. The EPA, which is there to keep the air clean, now, the environment clean, now is regulating, well, the ponds, and the Navigable Waters Act now reaches ponds, puddles, and seasonal, pools,
Yeah,
squishy parts in the, where you get your feet wet. And
sure.
that's not a navigable waterway. You can't even take a canoe into these things. So that's overreach. That's going to go away. The Supreme Court is saying we will not support court cases that rely on that kind of administrative law as opposed to legislative law. Everyone in this country secretly will be better off and will admit it that this era is now over.
This era of
Administrative overreach and microscopic regulations.
over or on its way out.
It's on its way. Well, the era of its blooming is over.
Yeah,
What you're left now with a very large and ugly plant right
yeah,
in your living room. Can't
yeah.
avoid it. But this is real. The real world. We can't wave a wand and get nirvana.
No.
The progressives have tried it for 90 years and it has failed. That's what's happening all around us now. And so the truckers are one of the biting teeth, the cutting teeth of the new era. All of the freelancers are enjoying something that everybody in the country should find beneficial. Because when the mess settles, we're going to have a huge bill, and the only thing I can see from an economic standpoint is to double people's salary or triple it. And the only way to do that is by working harder and smarter as your own boss and making more. And only you know the answer to that. No regulator, no teacher in school or any, knows the answer. So
Right.
the gig economy is a great way. It has remade parts of Massachusetts, urban areas, because people can now support themselves and fit it into their lives.
Well, even some people I know went from, oh my God, I hate my life. I hate my day-to-day job. I just go through it. It just sucks. And they were working 40 hours a week and they went to like 25 hours and decided they'd rather deliver food 15 the other hours.
Yep.
Even if they'll make just a little less, they're still happier. And it's just amazing to me that you go after a career in this country, you get something that you're, trying to get, hopefully, and then, 5-10 years in, one of the questions that used to be asked at job interviews, like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? It's like, now it's like, I don't know, in a bunker with nuclear clothing on, and like,
But
I mean, it's just, it's like, dude, people aren't thinking like that anymore.
no,
People are thinking, how can I minimize my W-2 work because my boss is just, I'm gonna lose it, or the owner, or whatever the reason might be, but they would rather deliver food, even if their job is something very important, and they used to not mind it. They mind it now.
we have gone to kind of a career model of uh, of people's work, and there are an enormous number of people who that doesn't fit.
Right.
I'm, I'm probably one of them, so
Yeah.
I can relate to this urge. If you want a linear career, I don't have it.
Yeah.
I can relate to everybody who wants to work outside, and when they want to change what they do it. I've done it all my life, and you can make a very good living if you're agile and just don't mind working hard. And there are people who can't work a 9 to 5 job. They're caring for someone, or they've got a medical condition, and the ability to be your own boss and the ability to concentrate on making money from your strengths, not from the areas where your coworkers think you're weak, is a major advantage. And
Mhm.
so we're going to end up with tens of thousands of occupations, which is good because we're all going to do better if we concentrate on our strengths.
Yeah.
So, it is a very bright future, even though right now things look very difficult. I will readily admit that, but it's
Everywhere right now is understaffed. My son is 15 years old, and in Michigan, I couldn't get my first job till I was 16. I was 16. I
right.
went and I was making, if I remember right, I'm 50 now. If I remember right, I was making 5.85 an hour to wash dishes. My son is making $17 an hour to lifeguard.
Nice.
I mean, I know things change and go up, and I'm not, pulling the story of I used to walk uphill to school both ways and all. I'm,
You
I'm
too.
just saying, I'm just saying that that's a big change.
Yes.
That a
Well,
15-year-old can go to get a $17 an hour job.
well, I'll put it in non-dollar terms. My first job was being a paper boy,
Yep.
and I delivered papers from 7 years old to I think 16, and I put enough away to pay for my first year of college in cash. Now, is there anything you can do as as a kid, you know, 7, 10, 12, 14, that'll pay for a college education? No, they're $60,000. It's
Right.
not, it's just it's impossible.
Right.
So, but I learned work habits and attitudes and skills, and have continued to learn those in a gig environment, or a project environment. Uh, if you just like to work, and enjoy it, there is unlimited potential for you in this economy and in this country. And the people's attitude is different than the
Oh
public,
yeah.
vibrations. Um,
Yeah.
the
I mean, we talk about this within my inner circles, but we also talk about it on a lot of the podcasts and stuff because it's unavoidable. It's like Karens out there. They're there. You can't not talk about them.
Yeah,
But things are different since the pandemic. And I mean, obviously that's a very like just blanket statement, but they are. I mean, people not only don't want to work, people don't understand work anymore.
yeah,
They
right.
they don't. I mean, I'm still curious how all these people are living without going back to work still.
I have only one thing to say about that from personal observation, but I buy my own food. I buy it at a grocery store, and I see a lot of Massachusetts state electronic benefits cards buying food at the hands of the person ahead of me. And many of these are young men, uh, or young women unencumbered by children in my eyesight. And I think the willingness of the various states to hand out money more or less without restriction is a economic and social mistake. They
Yeah,
have.
it's especially this far in. I mean, I consider it like blatant disregard for what the country stands for. Like,
Yes.
I mean, to be honest, like if anybody has never been, if you go to usdebtclock.org, try watching that for 10
Oh,
minutes.
yes. Right.
And it's not a joke site. It actually is real. It's doing it in real time, but it'll blow your mind how fast things are moving.
Well, as an optimistic point, let me say one thing about our worst adversary, and that is Ms. Lorena Gonzalez of San Diego.
Oh,
Uh, Believe it or not, she took the world's biggest poke at self-employed and freelancers and gig workers, and
mhm.
she is now between jobs, Steve. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Very few people know that.
You and I were talking about I mean, we already defined her though. Like she'll go wherever they tell her to go and she'll say there's bags of money there, right?
Yep, yep.
And they'll say, "Yeah, there's bags of money." She'll be like, "I don't even care what I'm a doctor now. Okay, I'm not going to school, but that's fine."
We put a profile of her on our website. Go to New Jobs America, and then in the search, just go, "Where is she now?" And you'll get the profile. But she is out of work. She is out of favor with her legislators because she lied to them, misled them about uh, the damage that she was doing to their constituents, not limited to her district at all.
Mhm.
And she made herself toxic to the unions. They could have, just swept her into this job she wants, being the head of the California Labor Federation. and she hasn't gotten it yet. And it's July. She promised she'd already be in the seat. So hey, take
John, on this comment here, I would challenge you to go watch my interview on this channel with Vina Duval and listen to it before you say that she's the brains of the operation,
uh,
because I know Mike has heard it. It's not a pretty interview. She's really like not as smooth as she usually is. Even usually Lorena can handle the questions and stuff at least, but she a couple times in that interview, and I mean I've had several people tell me this, she just kind of lost her direction and was like saying the wrong thing for her side. I don't know. You've heard it. You heard the interview I did with Vina, and
I've
it's just,
heard,
I mean, it's just grind your teeth. It's
yes,
just
it's Lorena, and Vina. It's hard to
or
pronounce.
Vina. Sorry, Vina.
Yeah, they they are in the habit of mischaracterizing those people who work for themselves. It's a habit that apparently was started by the David Weil guy who didn't make renomination to Wage and Hour Division, but he, in his book Fishered Workplace, which I don't recommend for vacation reading, he
No, but everybody, but everybody, Kim Cavan, Lisa Rothstein, Gail, they all tell me you need to read it though.
we'll be coming out with a digest, the highlights of the theft that he's proposing. But
Okay.
David Weil refers to freelancers in the form of janitors, and he does it so often in a 410-page book that there's 1.5 mentions on every 2 pages in the book of janitors, janitorial services, janitor singular, and cleaning services. I mean, it is
Right.
unbelievable to see this, and he doesn't recognize that there are 760 other occupations, of which 660 can readily be freelanceable. So mischaracterizing your opponent seems to be the hush hush. Like when they give them a 3x5 card, for talking points, it's like
Hmm.
mischaracterize all freelancers as janitors and talk about how pathetic they are. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. It's I just when I saw that comment, I was thinking, there were times I was even communicating with that I was communicating with Lorena too, via DM, and everybody was amazed. Just like everybody was what happened here? Oh, just like everybody was amazed when I got the interview with Vina. But everybody was they're like, "Wait, she replied to you, not Vina, but Lorena back at the time." And they're like,
Lorraine,
"Cuz Lorena blocks all of us. She doesn't reply to anybody."
she'll block you if she senses or her staff senses that you're antagonistic. If you're just like calling up to
Right, I wasn't. I was actually just calling to I mean, I was in a way. I was I
she
mean,
she emailed a reply to me. I appreciate that she did. I haven't used the contents of it, but it's there if I need it. But and
yeah,
it was printable. She wasn't obnoxious about it. She is more
yeah.
open. Vina truly has
He has
something.
a big background with immigrants too, though. That's a little bit different with hers. I will say, I'm not saying it's right, but Vina's background is all immigrants.
They're not the thing that joins the two of them is that they are not interested in the underlying economic benefits to the individuals who pursue this type of income. They are
Oh,
they just refuse to accept it.
I mean, Vina's the law professor at UC Hastings, and I believe her husband's pretty high ranking at Amazon.
Or Google, one of the two. Yes, it's one of the big tech companies.
I think it's Amazon,
They
which
let
she disses on all the time, saying you got to pee in a Gatorade bottle. You gotta, it's like, hey, shouldn't you just tell your husband this so he can fix it? I don't know. But so okay, let's see. So the unions, I guess the unions have not calculated um the current events, and I'm guessing when you sent that over to me, you meant like the current events of the world, of everything right now, the state of our economy, everything. And so I already don't like unions to begin with. I know you're a little more not pro union, but you're a little more union friendly than me. I still believe in a teacher union and a police and fire, and there's a couple, but I really have seen too much bad in unions, and maybe it's just been bad luck. Maybe I've just seen all the bad cases. But I also don't believe that it belongs in so many places. But this, they're not calculating the current events into their new freelancing bills. What can we take away from that?
Uh, they're not seeing the power of the resistance they're up against. They're a little boy waving a stick at a hornet's nest and not having been stung by a hornet. And they Lorena is a primary example. They have no idea. When you bankrupt someone, you acquire an enemy for life. As long as they're alive, they are going to if you make them sell their trucks, if you make them go out of business and work for some other dentist, literally there is no end to the the um, the strength of that, their emotional fervor to fight you. Plus, you've given them 40 hours a week or 50 or 60 to go ahead and pursue their fight against you. So you're really enabling your resistance. You're not accommodating anyone. It is bad faith legislation in all respects from an economic standpoint. So
Yeah. I saw this one comment from John. John, again, hey, what's up, Yost Malone? How are you, buddy? Good to see you. But John's been just crushing it with these. In my honest opinion, unions need to be reformed back to a time when the unions were not hyper partisan, which began in the 70s. Unions need to focus on twofold mission. See, I'm just not a union fan to begin with, so I don't think union reform is even. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't even think it's possible. I think that unions are too corrupt from the core, and I just don't. Personal opinion, I just don't see it.
I would reassurance on that, from my perspective at least, is that the monopoly grant of exclusive representation has brought out the worst element and installed them in union leadership. These are not people who thrive on competition, love to improve their services to both employers and to the employees.
Right.
They want to connive. They want to dip their hand into the pension plan and the cash flow of the union. They want to elect all their buddies. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to create value. They just want to grab it. And if they had to fight for their renewal rights at the Marjorie Davidson Junior High School, that different type of people would be leading unions, and they would be a lot more. They'd be something you could support. So we'll see.
So I mean, unions just want to stick. Here's my view, and I know it's extreme. Unions just want to stick their hand in your pocket, take part of your money, to provide you an assurance that in this day and age with technology, I don't even know if the assurance exists. I don't know if it could exist.
Yeah.
People are fired and let go on the gig platforms. You can be deactivated, and when you call to say, hey, what happened, and they tell you you're deactivated, they won't even say what they used to. Hey, well, let me look into it, get back to you tomorrow. They'll just say you're just deactivated, you're done, click.
Right.
I mean, they don't provide any reasons. They won't. I've talked to lawyers too who were dealing with this. Now they're like, there's just too many gig workers asking for it. It's nonsense. They're not providing it. And obviously, these are pitfalls, but I mean, like, I would rather have that, because I always seem to think that the people who get deactivated and stuff, the veteran workers I know, the only way they get deactivated is if like just something goes so absolutely upside down wrong and they get angry or frustrated in the moment and kick something or do something so out of character. Otherwise, really, these stories only apply, I think, to new gig workers who come on and find out, what do you mean? Like they'll put the drinks in front of a door and somebody opens the door, knocks over the drinks because it's outside of the push door, and then they phone a complaint on them, and one complaint can get you deactivated. So it's, I mean, this whole thing, I don't even see where a union would fit in. Like, what? Okay, you deactivated him and you're not giving us a reason. We're striking. You'd be striking every day.
Yes, right. There'd be too many.
You would be striking every day. You would never have work.
The most interesting thing that I've seen about the sensitivity of big tech is that Amazon has essentially declared over its generic product lines, where you have Amazon Basics and the office supplies and basic tools, and Amazon Basics for a lot of this stuff, automobile accessories.
Mm-hmm.
And they're basically saying that some of the stuff they've kind of been finessing, where they look into the records of other products and then underprice them and buy from the suppliers, and they're starting to clean up a very big act. I like the products that big tech used to provide.
Right.
In the last 7 or 8 years, perhaps they've become more predatory of their customers and of their providers. The
Mm-hmm.
if they've all switched to software as a service, and Microsoft, for instance, spends an enormous amount of time checking to make sure that your Excel and Word is, every dime of it is paid for, and you're not getting a single pixel that that you haven't
Right.
paid Adobe for. So they're feeling the pressure, Steve, and people who feel the pressure, they're going to accommodate. That's the law of physics.
Yeah. I mean, I still equate a big portion of this to, well, you can't have a pandemic and tell people to stay at home when they've never been told to do that before, and then give them 3 times as much money as they make and ever
Yes.
expect anything good out of them again.
Yes. Right.
Unless you're going to pay them 5 times what you used to pay them to come back to work.
Well, that's happening too.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Unless you're going to do that, I don't see what you're even bothering with anymore. People have learned, well, wait a minute, if you're able to give me, and I know we're not, I mean, again, go to usdebtclock.org. We don't have any money here. So,
That's true.
I mean, we're just printing it, and the more we print, it's such a beyond no decimal, but we are just killing the value of the dollar, and there's really no hard like rock equator to the dollar to make sure that it's where it should be, like other currencies.
Well, let's say the Supreme Court actually thought that they'd include that in their administrative overreach. I agree. I agree completely. I think a lot of these things are on their way out. People are going to have to sue, and they're going to have to pursue it to win. Luckily, there are a lot of nonprofits that have the smarts and the talent and the will and the financing to support those suits. So it's a group effort.
What if an AB5, we know that Washington State was trying to do one for the gig workers too. They were trying to do the same type of thing, push them into like a proposition. Right. And now they got it for the Seattle area. Same type of deal. New Jersey's fighting for it. I saw Pennsylvania trying to do the same thing that you guys did in Massachusetts and just knock it down where you can't fight the AB5 bill. So let's say that 6-7 states all of a sudden, doesn't matter which ones they are, had AB5 type legislation. We're shooting down Prop 22, and then the PRO Act started going after everybody and the right to work states, because that's the only way to kill the right to work states. Then you had mentioned, the impact of enraging, I loved that term too, of enraging 60 million people by taking job income and insurance, and, it's so, and investments. Like, so what is the effect if 1/3 of the people working every day are told you can't work anymore? Or you need to go to McDonald's, or dude, you need to have a union job. What are you doing?
Right.
What's going to happen?
the normal thing that happens is you have a general strike, and if you don't
But
have a
that's 60 million people.
that's what I'm saying. Would you go up with your little baseball bat and try to push back on 1,000 football stadiums full of people
No.
who were angry at you for having demolished their no, you wouldn't touch them. And they haven't the opponents, the proponents of this badness haven't taken that into effect. The other the other thing that would catalyze something like that is they're not gonna meet their rent and their mortgage payments.
Yeah.
And they have car payments, and that means that you have a basically a financial meltdown. If they just stay at home and don't pay for anything, now they're, you know, effectively squatters. And I mean, that's Venezuela, and there is no law. So under those circumstances, so I believe this country will be able to find remedies short of disaster. I really do. I think that's what the Supreme Court is saying. I think that California and Governor Newsom's out on a elect me to higher office
I
exit
know.
exit strategy. I think he's dreaming, but crazier things have happened.
Well, I mean, gosh, I wouldn't want him. I mean, that guy, every time he makes a rule for the state, he insists on breaking it within the hour.
Yes, yeah,
It's
right,
like,
right,
you can't do this, but I'm gonna go do it right now.
right. I'll see you over the French Laundry while
Right. And then I'm gonna go up to Montana and then
oh yeah, Montana. I mean, the guy is just like can't see it. Just
well,
can't.
see, I saw a weird side of that angle brought out too. And it's quick. It's amazing how quick even just the news when you watch news, this is a perfect news story for people to understand how it's not fake media, but how quick they'll back off. Like they went up to Newsom, they said, "Hey, you're," and I know his wife's from Montana. Her family has a ranch up there. They were up there visiting them, and he said, "Well, I'm not here on any government funds. We're just here visiting." And they said, "What about your 65 person detail? Are they paid?"
Yeah,
And he said, "No questions," and walked away.
yeah. That's it.
He didn't expect that one, but that's a big one. You
He does
can't be going there if you work for California and then rating. And he brought 65 people after making that
right.
rule.
That's that's half of a 65 people. It's a half of a short 737. You
And
know.
he took it to a state where, and again, I'm trying so hard not to be political or anything, but it's just hard when he's like, I get that he doesn't like that Montana isn't LGBTQ friendly, but in my mind, this is just me. I have nothing against anybody, but I don't think that's a reason to ban travel to a state.
Right.
I really, it blows my mind. I know that people think differently, but I don't see how anybody's on board with that. People have family in these 13 states he banned.
Yeah.
And now he's going up to see his. I don't. It's just crazy. But I mean, when you say take to the streets, you're talking about 60 million people, and it's 60 million hardworking people. It's not like people who will just go, you know what, I can afford to take 3 years off. Let's pull the yacht out. We'll go around the world.
Right.
These are people who are going to immediately be in trouble.
Yes.
This reminds me the level of like a PRO Act, take away right to work states, make everybody under this horrible type stuff. Reminds me of the same thing, almost to the same level that would happen if you went house to house trying to collect everybody's guns.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. You can't hire people to do that work.
Yeah,
The cops would
because
say
you're
that.
never going to convince the gun owner, even if like, well, that's changing. We've changed.
Right.
He's going to say, I don't care what you changed. This is my gun.
Ray guns. It's another one of these non-constitutional activities that the left, in general terms, is fantasizing about, and they don't have any traction. And the bluer the downtown area, the less attraction it has. That's where the biggest gun registration is happening is in those inner cities. You look it up.
Yeah.
So I think the enterprise is over. That's why I say the end of the New Deal. It's like you. It's just analogies fail me at the moment, but this in interfering with the daily life and the daily self control of normal, moderate Americans is going to come to an end. You're going to have to leave people alone. You won't have the money to interfere. There won't be the support for that. I think you're going to see major changes in.
I mean,
And
if you start erasing police from that equation too, you're gonna have like almost like guerrilla warfare
yes,
areas.
right, and no one. No, it's the rule of the jungle is only the strong survive.
Yeah.
So no one wants that.
So obviously, before we are done here, let's have the last topic be my own boss. Let's go through this. And it's bemyownboss.com or .org because I'm going to put it up on the screen.
It's the name of legislation. Uh, it's Be My Own Boss is the name of
Oh, what's the website again?
New Jobs America,
Okay.
like regular spelling, no punctuation, .com. And that's where to go to follow us. If anybody who enjoyed the program, just go click join and let me get on my list. We'll keep you in touch. Be my
So
own.
what else do you want to tell them about New Jobs America though? Is there anything more? I mean, obviously they can go there and check, but it's good to plant some little seeds to get them there.
We believe that we have the solution, the legal solution, the simplest possible legal solution to the freelancer lack of freedom, and that is to exempt them from the labor laws for their own work. Uh, and that's what the legislation provides. You could say we should abolish AB5, we should abolish all these other laws and withdraw. That's a very complicated task,
Yeah.
and it is much easier to take the freelancers out of AB5 than to take AB5 out of California law. So
If
our
you take all the freelancers out, what's the reason for AB5?
well, then you'll be left with the traditionalist unions, and they'll be saying, I've got all this law. Then someone else will come along and clean it up.
Yeah.
But the fact is, even if you told 60 million or 7 million California freelancers were going to get rid of AB5, there'd be a lot of them that go, I don't know about that. Like, what does that mean? Like people get tradition. If you say we're going to take out people who are voluntarily willing to be self-employed, they, oh, I believe that too. So you can gather an audience of the people who want to be Uber riders and the people who want to be Uber drivers, people who want their goods shipped by truck and people who want to drive the trucks that ship them. So by slimming it down into something that people can understand, there it is, Be My Own Boss. We have outlined a program of legislation for the federal sphere, which is international, interstate, and federal government business. And we're going to staple to that bill the state laws. There's a pair of them there'll be one for each state to modify the FLSA compliant state law to allow this same transaction. So this would get Gavin Newsom and the governor of Massachusetts and all of the others, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, get them out of the business of deciding who is and who is not going to work.
Yeah. It's funny you just said that because John had put him up as in this comparison.
Yeah, right.
I guess maybe not everybody's of age to get that, but I got it.
Thanks.
But okay, so obviously I'll leave links in the show notes. I'll put this website in the show notes, and you can normally find best place to find Mike as far as I know is Twitter, right? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, you can go find. I'll put his Twitter handle in there. You can always, if he does, if he's not on at the time, he'll get back to you pretty quick, or at least he always has with me. So, it's a good way. I don't know. Twitter's a good way for the people who use Twitter are good at Twitter. Some people just don't use it, but those who do, I always prefer that as the platform because you can get a lot of information quickly. So you can always find Mike there. Obviously, the website's going to be a place that you could get in contact with him through too, because I think I don't want to give out his email, but his email is at this domain. So, um, and yeah, so John must know you because he likes you.
I'm not sure I've met him on Twitter, but I will certainly look forward to it. It's Twitter's an artist medium just like any other.
There's a lot of people with fake names too in
Yeah,
these groups for AB5 or no AB5
right,
that have had other accounts and got so into it with people that they just created fake accounts. I've met a few.
yeah.
Um, there were trolls who wanted to be trolls, not your average Twitter trolls, but just trolls who just wanted to troll this event so bad. Um, but I love the fact that like you've got it, you think you've got it where this is the best solution, because everything I always hear about, let's take away independent contractors, obviously that gets me steamed. I want to stop it. I immediately kick into that mode. But even when I'm being okay, I'll listen to at least whatever gibberish you're claiming. It just sounds like worse gibberish than I expect.
Yes.
Like I don't ever, like, every time somebody talks to me, I feel like either I'm getting dumber or or the things they're telling me are getting stupider, but one or the other, it's happening. I can't believe it. It's like I'm so used to going up a ladder with people. You get more answers.
Yeah.
Now it's like you get kicked up the ladder, you're getting less answers or wrong ones.
Yep.
Or nobody's on the same page and they don't even understand what they're doing.
Well, we're asking of people, and we'll have the an overview that anyone can see. We should have it up very shortly. It's prepared. Um, all we're asking them to do is to be able to understand the phrase, and I'm momentarily, I elect to accept the rights and responsibilities of self-employment, and the right and ability to employ others in any way uh, that satisfies the law. So you can work solo, you can work moonlighting, and you can employ others, which is common, and you'll all be able to do that, having accepted the rights and responsibilities to be your own boss. So, and then there are other parts that integrate it. That we modify 5 or 6 other pieces of legislation so that the entire U.S. government law code respects your choice, because you're a grown-up American, you can handle this, and no more of this whining about janitors. We're talking
Yeah.
660 occupations are in this category. So that's
It's like Kim Cavan going down to that fight, the last one she went down to in New Jersey, to thinking that she was going to be fighting for a lot of different groups, and she found out that it was just to give a carve out to the caddies. She
yeah,
walked in thinking it was going to be all these different groups, even if they didn't show or not, they were represented, but they were just saying, we're going to give a carve out to the caddies. Like
that's
that's all that meeting was about, because the 1% want their caddies on the golf course.
yes. That is graft and corruption at work. That means
Yeah.
they are selling exemptions, like the Church of the Middle Ages used to sell whatever they called them, indulgences.
Yeah.
But looks like Miss George does Be My Own Boss clear the federal IRS? Yes, it specifically modifies. It provides the capability to with a self-employment identification number, an SEIN, that fits in all the IRS 9-digit code boxes, and it modifies the IRS definition to be anyone who has voluntarily signed up with this site at the Department of Labor to be categorized as self-employed. So the answer to Miss George is yes.
I would think the same form could be put out like what you're saying, that, like the way you had it worded. You could just even basically just word it like, you know, I understand me better than anybody, and I am willing to take on all the responsibilities of whatever I do. I won't break laws. and I don't need to talk to any federal government people. I will just pay my taxes, so leave me alone.
This is the short version.
But does that kind of sums it up, right? I mean, it's like, dude,
I elect,
just let me be me, man. Like,
we call it, you're not registering, you're electing to, you're electing to accept it, and you get a number for doing so, and that number is your token. So
yeah,
I can go to Steve's Giant Corporation, and I can be an employee if I want, or I can be a contractor, and I
yeah,
would give them a different ID number, and that's what tracks it. I'm in charge, and I'm responsible the whole way.
yeah.
That's what you want. You got
And I almost think that's, to be honest, I almost feel like that's what they're going to need to have, because I still to this day, and you could tell me for another, we could go on for hours where you're telling me
yes.
why, but I don't think that, I don't understand, and I don't even need to, because I just don't understand how you would ever get right to work states, even on a federal level, like all of them. Oh, you don't have that anymore.
Well,
They
you're
would be
not
like, we don't care what you say.
the the threat of abolishing right to work, I believe, is over. It's my understanding at the federal level, because Manchin, Sinema, and perhaps Kelly have voted against the PRO Act,
Okay.
and legislation like that. The Department of Labor can't put it in. Uh,
Right now, but I mean, they could come back at this.
oh, they'll try, but I
Yeah.
mean, it won't get very far in federal court,
Yeah.
even if they find they're all the right judges in Alabama or something. Where Kentucky is now right to work. Uh, the, uh, uh, the Supreme Court has ruled on this, and it's not ambiguous, and it has enormous support among the public. So I co-sponsored the PRO Act, but John, it would depend on. Manchin voted against it, I believe, even though you can co-sponsor it without voting for it, and I believe that's what's happened. Manchin is just saying, I'm not cooperating anymore. So
Right. Yeah, I think that's right, because I wouldn't just say this comment, because I would think Mansion falls into this too.
Manchin's yeah, he's acting like a grown. He sees what's coming.
He's acting like an adult. I love it. It's like, that just sums up Washington right there. Like, well, he's acting like, okay, so that I get it. Nobody else is. So
Well,
that's the diaper shortage, I guess. Been sending them all to the Washington politicians.
formula shortage. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. But hey, Mike, thank you for coming on, and I again, I'd love to have you back, couple months or something, just always kind of catch up with you, because I love these conversations, and I think that it helps a lot of people who don't even know where to dive into this stuff. Even on my YouTube page, there's like 10 videos, and some of them are with Kim and the gals from AB5, and they're 2-3 hours. So it's like, where would you go?
well,
And so doing these, I think, is like the new one, makes it so that people can come find this and say, "Oh, okay, that's the one I'm going to check out."
I think that's the spirit of Be My Own Boss as legislation, is that it shows people in concrete terms there is a solution to this. We're not going to argue about this for 1,000 more years while our economy and our country degenerate. There is a solution to this, and it's something they can get behind, because they can take this capability, the freedom which they and they alone choose, and run with it and run their lives as they wish. So, and thank you, John Lopez.
Yeah, thank you, John. And John, you were, again, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because yeah, you're somebody I would like to see come into these conversations sometimes. You've had a lot of good comments I'll be going through later. Any last words before we wrap it up, Mike, or anything you want to plug, or anything
I
going on that people should know? Or
plugged Be My Own Boss. People are going to
yeah,
start to look for it, and it'll be there in a day or two. And my web.
anything before November to,
Oh, register to vote and vote uh, early
because
on.
November is going to be important. It's important.
Yes, absolutely important.
Yeah.
And leave your party preferences aside and vote for the policies of the individuals on the ballot have supported and will support. So it's a very important election.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I will be voting.
Yeah, I will be voting too. So, well, thank you everybody, John, or Mike, if you can just stick around for 1 second. Thank you everybody for joining us here today. We ran a little bit over, but I think we covered a good amount of content. I'm seeing a lot of nice comments in here, and hopefully you guys all took away something from this. Go spread this out. I saw John said he will distribute this video. It's too important. And the election 3.5 months away. So that's kind of how I feel for all you guys. Please share it. Go to social media, share it, share newjobsamerica.com. Go look at newjobsamerica.com, see what it is. Just kind of like any website, land on it and just kind of tool around, see what it's about, and then share it if you can. This is not and I'm going to have to step out of the bounds of what a lot of the people know, but this is not freelancers and that, but like gig workers on platforms. This is not like a Instacart strike where 100 people are going to stay home, but the other 20,000 are going to go work, so there's no effect. This is a big deal, and just like the voting goes, like when Prop 22 overvoted in California and how you thought it was going to go that way in mass, I think when it really comes down to it, we're going to end up around that 59-60% who are like, no, you're not taking away this
Yes.
privilege and right we've had forever.
None of these people have a plan B.
Yeah.
Believe me.
No. And so once you start taking the legs out of a couple of them, I mean, it's really, they got nothing to stand on, is it, to begin with? I mean, to me, I just get very shocked. It always sounds very stupid when somebody's, I shouldn't say stupid, but it sounds very unplanned. It sounds like I could like find like 20 holes in their thing. Like, well, what about this? What about that? And they're like, well, that's just gonna be taken care of, kind of thing. Like, I'm like, see, this is what's not good. That should never be an answer of yours.
Yeah.
If I point out a hole in something, we're having a discussion, you can't just say, well, they thought about that. Who's they? Who thought about it?
No. This was not thought about in the interests of the people who it affects deeply. It was thought about by external forces that have something to gain personally.
Yes.
We're going to replace the responsibility right where it belongs, with the individual.
Okay, guys. So with that said, make sure you go over to New Jobs America, and it's a mailing list right on there. So make sure you sign up for the mailing list so that you get any of the information that Mike and any other people that are with him over there are putting out, and learn the term "be my own boss." I guess as we get closer to the election, I'm not even sure if it's a hashtag being used on Twitter, but it probably should be.
It is. I use it,
Okay.
and others do. Yes.
Okay, because I'll start using it too. Because especially like not like if you use grocery hashtag, like good luck finding anything you're gonna want to find. But when you use something specific like this, I'm gonna find all of you guys and anybody saying this term, and that'll only be a select group. So um use this in a hashtag on Twitter or Facebook or any of that stuff, because it does help. Just make it a camel-backed word, a capital B, lowercase e, capital M, lowercase y, no spaces, and a hashtag in the front. And just keep doing it. The more it gets out there, put it on Reddit, put it on everything. The
And
more it gets out there, people will look into it, they'll find out about it, and they'll start to question it, even if they're confused. Well, wait a minute, what is this?
yeah.
So, and that's what needs to happen. So again, thank you for joining us, Chat. Thank you, Mike, of course, for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
This
Appreciate it.
is always informative and good stuff. So we'll see you back here soon, guys, and